Yeah, it's on. Perfect.
Okay. Great. I'm gonna talk about doing automated updates with a service called Violinist.io, which, full disclosure, is a service I created and we use in Nimedia, and it's something you can pay for, but it's also completely free for open source projects. First, the most important slide about me. I'm a senior developer and team leader in Nimedia, and I have a master's in art criticism, but I work as a programmer. But I'm also a master of stuffing a bunch of animated GIFs into a presentation. Yes. And I do the annually transparency report on the progress of stuffing these animated GIFs in, and I can, with a certain amount of pride, say that we have a 1-to-1 GIF ratio in this presentation.
That's amazing. Yeah, that's great.
This is also why I'm sorry, that was a bit premature, because this is the next slide.
Yeah.
It's about the GIF ratio. Yeah, everyone is pleased with that.
What was the ratio last year?
I think it was around 40%. Yeah.
Thank you for the improvement.
So yeah, progress is. I'm a bit concerned about next year. Maybe 2 GIFs in every slide. So it's 2-to-1. Yeah. So this is the agenda. We're going to talk about what does automated updates mean. There's a cursor. Where's the cursor? Sorry. What does it mean for Drupal? In this context, we're going to talk a bit about continuous integration and continuous delivery. And after I said those 2 words, it seems like we're going to do some sort of enterprises presentation with something that is almost unimaginable for people with their own infrastructure and tooling to set up. But it's absolutely possible for people with a hobby budget to do on their own project, and it's pretty easy. And a whole bunch of live demos, because I think it's important to show how you can actually do it, and how it's not that hard to set up, at least to get started. And then hopefully all of those live demos will result in an actual automated update. We will see. I'm a bit concerned. So, automated updates with Drupal. I assume it sounds like a horrible idea to many people, very dangerous. Automated updates run, and then your site probably has crashed when you wake up in the morning. That's what people assume, because you want to test it yourself, and you want to, see that the site actually works after you update stuff. So it sounds dangerous. Of course, it can be dangerous. But we're going to deal a bit about that in the presentation and in the demos. So here's some points about that. It was actually mentioned by Dries in his Dries note in Vienna as an initiative that Drupal wants to move towards automated updates, because this is something that it's something that WordPress does, for instance, and it's also something that people feel are a feature that is kind of expected to have in such a system. And it has been available in WordPress for ages. You can just enable it and forget about it, more or less. So the WordPress approach is something I don't personally like very much. It's I haven't actually tried it, but I understand it's like you enable it, and please correct me, those of you who actually use WordPress. You enable it, and your web server will actually change the files on your server in the background, and basically writing to the file system. And for those of us that uses Git for version control, for example, that might be a problem for your workflow. And so putting those things together, it seems like it's a best fit for hobbyists that upload their files to a server and then forget about it, and maybe not suited for, I don't know, bigger projects that has a pipeline for testing things and deploying things and stuff like that, build steps and all of that. So this is what we're going to talk about.
I can comment quickly.
Yes, can you do that?
Yeah, because I know it really well.
Mm-hmm.
And you're right. Matt Nomberg actually said a couple of years ago that hey, in the future you shouldn't even know what version of WordPress you're running.
Yeah, that's horrible.
The latest latest. And we, when we started making our WordPress sites for some clients, we quickly found out that this it wasn't Git friendly and blah blah blah. So we actually made a tool that's built on WPC CLI, a Drush equivalent, so that we can say that hey, we only want to auto update these 2 plugins, say, and use asterisks and all that to have some logic, and you just run the command on run or whatever.
Yeah, so you use that instead of the automated updates then.
Exactly.
Right. I understand. Yeah.
There are some tools.
So I'm gonna just quickly throw some expressions in the presentation, also because then I could add more GIFs. There's one per slide. Continuous integration is a thing. This is the Wikipedia definition of it. Basically, it's to put it shortly, maybe you want to test your site, the functionality of your site on each commit, so that you know that your site will always work. For example, if your business critical thing is that a user can log in and create an ad, for example, maybe you want to have a test for that, so that every time you, for example, upgrade core, you know that users can still add another ad. And the other buzzword we're going to put out there is continuous delivery. This is an illustration of continuous delivery. And this is the Wikipedia definition. Basically what that means is that you, well, there's different aspects to it, but what we are going to talk about is automating the deployment process, but it's also used within environments to ship your code continuously. But in this context, we're going to talk about automating the deployment, which is something you can fit under this word. So those were the buzzwords, and as I said earlier, when we put those buzzwords in there, it may seem like it's like something that could be hard to get started with, and something that you have to be in a big company with a huge infrastructure behind it, and I don't know, a continuous delivery department to get started with this. And my kind of the takeaway here should be that no, you don't need that. You can totally do this by yourself, and it's not impossible to achieve all of these buzzwords, even if you don't have the budget and infrastructure and departments. So live demo, yes. What could possibly go wrong? I think I have to see the screen.
It's huge. Arrow, it's huge.
Yes, arrow is there again. Sorry. So I'm going to do a live demo about a couple of things. Where's that? Okay. Great. Why is that not over there? That could be it. It's not there still. Okay, first thing that went wrong. Yes, great. Okay. So what I have here is a a local site. I have a Drupal site locally here. And I also have it deployed on a server. You can see right now it's the same site. Just gonna take up my notes here. Yes. So the first thing we want to do before we automate things is make sure that we have tests for our project. And I prepared something for that. This is a repo for that very same site. And I'm going to be using a free service. It's at least free for open source projects called the Travis CI. And what that does is, it's running your tests on pull requests. So what we are going to do in this project is create pull requests for different things, for example, updates. And then Travis is going to tell us if our site still works, and that is going to sort of verify that we can deploy this to the live site. So I've prepared a pull request here. That's going to hopefully start running the tests. It's actually run some tests already. But what this is going to do is build the project on Travis and run a test on our code base. And we can see what the files in this pull request are doing. First one is more or less metadata for Travis. It's telling Travis what it should do to install things. Install the latest version of Composer. I more or less copied this from the Drupal Composer project. And it's going to install all of the dependencies, and it's going to install Drupal using the config we have committed in this repo. And then it's going to start a server, and then it's going to run Behat, which is a testing framework. This file is the metadata for Behat, so that Behat knows what it should be testing. It's going to be using the local server in Travis to go look for the site and find the buttons it's supposed to click. We can see we added some dependencies here. And I also, for the purpose of showing that we are deploying it live afterwards, added a change to the site title of the site. It's called Violence Drupal Demo Travis after we merge this. Then we are also running tests for code style, which Balázs mentioned earlier. You can do that for not only style but security related. I did actually not know that, but you could add that in here as well, of course. And then this is the actual test. It's a very simple test. You just go to the front page and you see that you can see the site title. So of course, if the site breaks with an update, you would obviously not see the site title. But of course, if the update broke the ability to log in, this test would of course not cover that. But this is a demo of things. So if we go back here, I was going to say hopefully the test would have passed. Almost. So this in GitHub, this is the view where you can see the continuous integration services, or they call it checks, that are enabled and are running, and at some point hopefully passing. And if you wanted to, you could also look at the tests while they were running, which we're going to do now, because I have no idea why it's not done yet. It says it takes a while. Good news. But we don't have to wait for that. Maybe in a project you would want to require these checks to be passed before you merge it. But oh, they passed, great. But I did not enable that because it's demo, and I have no idea what's going to happen. So what we're going to do is now merge this pull request. So what we are expecting now is that the title of the site has changed. Which window am I? So we can first check that locally here. I'm going to just bring over my Is this easy to see, or you can see this? Okay. So if I pull here now, I should probably have some changes. Oh, great. You can see that certain things have changed, and what I expect to have to do right now is to install the dependencies, and I would have to import the config. Oops. So now the local site should have changed its title. Ah, great. What is that? Okay, sorry about that. Yes, live demos. Okay, so we can see the site has changed, the site title has changed, and now we're going to do the same on the live site. By the way, it's a horrible idea to use the root user to control your server in any sort of way like this, but this is for demo purposes, so I would not recommend to do it literally the way I do it here. So what I expect now is that if I pull in the repo and import the config, I change the title of the page. That's the sound when it changes. And here you can see we have actually changed the title on the live site. So that's good. We have set up a local site and a live site, and we see that the pull request things are working, and we have a test to check that our site still works. So what we're going to do now is set up automated deployment that every time we push to the master branch, it's going to be deployed automatically into the live site. So the way I do this, in this presentation at least, is to use something called CodeShip. CodeShip is a service that can it can actually also run your tests, but it can also deploy your code base, and it's a service you can pay for, or it's free for open source projects as well. So what we can do here, when you create a new project, I already created it, is that you can define the test commands. We don't need to do that in this case because we're testing it in the Travis service, but you can also specify the deploy commands. You can use different pre-configured services for this, or you can specify shell script basically. And you can see here another horrible idea that we give access to the root user for CodeShip, but this is for demo purposes, and just want to show you how it works. So what this does, it's going to SSH into the server, pull the code base, install any new composer dependencies, run any updates if that's relevant, and then import config and clear the cache. So right now I have configured it to not be enabled on the master branch, but let's try to do that. And I'm going to take up my notes. Yes. So what we want to do now is create a test run of making sure that the deployment works smoothly. So the thing we're going to do is edit the site title again. Let's change it to the CodeShip instead, or CodeShip. And then we can create a pull request for this. And we want to add this change. Then awesome commit message. right? And in our repo now, we should see our newly pushed branch, and we can create a pull request for this. Now, ideally, we would now wait for the test to pass so that we know that we didn't break our site by changing the title, but this is a live demo, and I really, really hope it's going to pass, and it's going to go much faster if I just merge it. So let's do that. So now, basically what we have done is push to the master branch, right? So what that should do is trigger an automated deployment. And I am anxious to see if this is happening now. So you can see here it's running on the master branch. We can see what it's doing also. So basically it's creating a build environment and running the test if it has to. But we are skipping that and going right to deployment, and it said that was okay. So if we're going to the live site now, hopefully it have changed its name. So that was pretty cool. So what we're going to do now is actually updating Drupal automatically. And for that we're going to use the violinist service that I have over here. So what this does is it's creating a new project on Violinist that you want monitored for dependencies, and the first time you add it, it will do a run and create pull requests for the dependencies that are actually out of date. This specific site, for example, is I created this presentation while the version was still 8.6.1, so I expect a new pull request to come in to update it to 8.6.3. And let's see what happens. So what we have done now is create, we have queued the project for running updates. This is the status of it, and hopefully it will start like immediately. But we can talk a bit about the parts that are automatically configured. It's based on the Composer JSON schema. It uses the extra key in there, where you also put the Composer patches for those of you familiar with it. And you can specify different things. There's also a couple of beta features that are not listed here. But one thing you can do is do blacklist, like you were talking about in WordPress. Like maybe some packages you don't want to update them. It could be different reasons for this. For example, you have a custom module that integrates with it, and it's only compatible with the 1.01 version, and the 1.03 version breaks it somehow. Now it started running, luckily. Of course, this is an indication you should probably update your custom module, but that's another story. For convenience, you can add them here. The other configuration option here is to allow updates beyond constraints. What that means is, for example, for this project, I have specified it requires Drupal core 8.6.1. And basically, if you ask Composer to update that, it will refuse because your constraint is very specific. You will have to require it again with a constraint, which is, we can look at the Composer JSON file. A constraint in this context means this caret here, or also the tilde character is a constraint. So having a constraint like this means it's okay to update everything within the 1.x range. But if you specify it specifically 8.6.1, then Composer thinks that you are probably only wanting that version. But if you're running automated updates, then you might actually want to check, is it compatible with one that is beyond my constraint, then I might actually want to update that. The last option here is update with dependencies. That translates directly to the Composer option, update with dependencies. When you run, for example, update Drupal core with dependencies, you will update Symfony components if they have updates, or Twig, for example. Yeah. So hopefully things should happen here. Live demos. Okay, we can look at a GIF in the meantime. Where's the GIF? I lost the GIF. Oh man. Here's a GIF. Man, shouldn't take this
So
long.
I have a question.
Yes.
When you're working on your slides, how much of the time is dedicated to finding the GIFs, and how is for the rest of the presentation?
I would like the answer to be the GIFs find me. But seriously, I do the slides first, and then I try to find GIFs for as many of the slides as possible, and the threshold for finding a GIF relevant is very low. So that's why it ends up being so many.
And what did you search for when you found the roller coaster?
What did I search for?
Continuous deployment.
Something continuous, something... I don't really remember actually. Fast, automation, no, I don't know. You have some, different
Are you
variation.
drinking beer when you're doing this, or is it
That
sober?
may or may not happen, yeah. Okay, we can skip this part for now, because I'm going to come back to it later. Hopefully it will create a pull request for me. Because what this will end up doing is creating the pull request. So as we're talking about automated updates, as you may then understand, you still have to press one button to update Drupal core. You have to merge the pull request. So I think there's room for improvement. Could we skip clicking the merge pull request button somehow? And the answer is yes, we can do that. There's also another service, which is something you can pay for, but it's free for open source, called Mergify, which will, based on certain rules, say that based on certain rules, it will say that it performs certain actions. So one such rule could be, for example, if the pull request includes Drupal core security, and the author is this service, and all of the tests pass, yes, I want it merged automatically. So now I'm going to enable it for this repo, and then we're going to, let's see if the pull request can. God damn it! And I prepared a pull request for, I think, yeah, for Mergify here. We can look at how that looks. It says here, it's a YML file that we're fairly familiar with now in Drupal 8. It says here that given certain conditions, and in this case the status checker Travis should have a status of success, and the title should be a Drupal core, and the author should be this user. If all of those conditions are true, merge the pull request automatically. Now you probably want to add some additional rules to, I don't know, not end up merging pull requests that are relevant, but this is a tweak you can do. And what this does is when we try to enable it, it will actually do a configuration check if it looks good. So we can verify that we didn't do any syntax errors, like I did here, as you see. So we're going to merge that now, which means Mergify will be enabled. And then we're going to try to get this to run. Just going to queue another one. Maybe we're more lucky. So what we're expecting then is that the violinist service will create a pull request updating Drupal core, and when that pull request passes the status check, Mergify will merge it for it automatically, and when it is merged to master, CodeShip will deploy it automatically. So basically there will be no human interaction towards the updating, and we still have all of our build pipeline in place. So it's very different from updating the files on the server like WordPress does. So this is the one thing that should work now. That would be great if it could. It's running the second one. Maybe it's running on a faster server, hopefully. This is the last part of the demo, so if it doesn't work, then we can just skip ahead, yeah. Come on.
We need to have some like waiting gifts that you can show us.
Well, there's a GIF.
It's only a bit somewhat less exciting than
Yeah, there's some like cats or something.
Giphy cat. There's a bunch of cats.
What do you think?
Yeah.
We did that.
Oh, my
Oh,
God.
there's that one.
We had it before. Aw.
Very good reaction to waiting
Wait,
games.
I want to see the kitten above.
What, this one?
Yeah, that one.
Oh, that's a good one.
I have a cat like that.
There's some inspiration for you here as well. Yeah. I'm assuming you have this literal search in Giphy all the time.
Oh, probably.
Yeah, he took the top.
Oh.
Okay, it's actually created a pull request. So what this has done now basically is run the composer updates command on a worker that spawned out of my queue. And we can see it's changed two files. One is because we actually had a very specific constraint. We had to change the constraint. And the other one is the log file where you can see that it has upgraded core and only core, so no Symfony components. So what we are expecting now is, I can also say something about this, is the issue will contain all of the, oh, it's actually merged, okay, we can look at that later. The issue will contain all of the changes. So for Drupal it's a lot, but for example, if you depend on the Symfony library that has 5 changes, you can quickly see is this going to break my site or not. Hopefully, at least, with links to the commits, so you can see what code changed. And a little note here in the bottom that all of the messages are open source, and you can create pull requests for them. And we can see here that the test passed, and then that the Mergify merged it. And now I have the status report here open, so if I refresh here, hopefully. Hey, so fully automated updates. So that was the demo. And to recap, what we actually did was we added continuous integration, added tests for making sure our site works, added continuous deployment so we don't have to deploy the project ourselves. We added automated updates through Violinist, and then we added the automatic PR merge so we don't actually have to push the button. And the last point is profit, because you don't have to work with it anymore, theoretically. Of course, there's some caveats to that. You have to have good test coverage. I mean, if my site now is impossible to log into, that would be a huge problem. I have no test for that. You might want to, for example, target only security updates for this full automation. Maybe you want to, for example, review the pull request yourself if there's a minor update that is not a security update, but maybe if it's a security update, you want to actually merge it fully automatically. And of course, in Drupal, we have modules that can have update hooks that creates or changes config files, for example. They would obviously not get committed by such an automated update. So you have to make sure you are actually aware of what has changed in the things that you are pulling in. So that was my last slide. Thank you. And
thanks for all the fish, cats and whatever. I'm very much interested to see what are the possibilities for the conditions in Violinist.
Yeah.
first. So how we can set up like above the score of 15 out of 25 in a security advisory.
Right.
Will trigger all the things to deploy. First, second question is if I might have.
You need to repeat the question.
Yes. Okay.
So maybe,
Let's take the
maybe-
first. Well, I would say that the conditions is something you would want to set in the fully automated merge things. In my opinion, maybe you want actually pull requests for everything, but maybe you don't need to have everything fully automated unless it's a threshold, as you say. So that would be some rules you would set in for example, Mergify, or there's other services, or you can integrate it yourself. Yeah.
Yeah. The second one, okay.
Yeah. Oh, so, yeah.
but you need to repeat it. Yeah.
And the question was, how can you set the rules to a certain threshold for like the severity of the security update for this kind of automation? Yes.
So just rewind for the answer.
And
Then I'm gonna do the answer backwards because that makes sense. Or yeah.
And the second, what are the other services that violinist can integrate with? Like, it's okay, another deployment. So it's not like always just on GitHub, creating pull request, merging it, stuff like that. But for instance, creating a new issue in Jira or
Yeah.
Redmine or PM softwares are sort of integrated somehow.
No, but it has Sorry. What kind of integrations does it have with, for example, ticket systems like Jira and Redmine? And what?
So no, the answer is
No, I was repeating the question. But the answer is that there's no integration with ticket systems, but it has integration with both GitHub and GitLab, so you can use that, and you can use other tools to, synchronize pull requests and tickets.
Is there a plan for that?
For a ticket, no, that's something you will need to integrate towards the version control provider. Yeah.
Thanks.
I can add to the answer. Basically, there is a special Drupal dedicated service, DropGuard. If you know it, so I think you can check only security, and you can check the security score, and it will be more tailored to Drupal updates and Drupal specific processes.
Yeah.
I was mainly looking for a competition. Is it kind of something similar or not?
Yes. Well, thank you.
Thank you.